So normally we open an episode with an anecdote or a joke or just being a couple of jagoffs.
Yeah. It's in our nature.
Yeah, we're built that way. and I guess it is an anecdote, but I have a very specific anecdote that I wanted to share because of the episode that we're going to do.
Okay.
And we'll get to it, but I guess I can't really tell the story without saying that we're gonna cover Heaven's Gate, and more specifically the critical response to Heaven's Gate. And
we're gonna get to it later.
Right. But in order to tell the anecdote, you have to know that.
Okay.
And it was really bothering me, like on a personal level. And I'm like, what? Like, movies are called wrong all the time. Like, why is this one bothering me so much? And I picked that scab and found a memory under there.
Oh.
Which I'm going to share with you now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hit me with it.
So when I was in undergrad, I had worked on this script, I think from like my sophomore year up until I presented it in my super senior year. It was my final project. And I'd put all of my stuff. It was called Saving Alice, A Dance Macabre.
Right. Okay. I think I remember actually seeing advertisements for that around campus.
We had great PR. It was me and the other cast just running around stapling into things.
Of course. That's how everything worked at
Right.
IUP.
Right. It was great. So we're in a writer's circle together sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
My writing tends to be not as jokey and more personal.
Oh, absolutely.
Just kind of like cut my chest open and dump it all out.
It's like Iggy Pop cutting himself open at a show accidentally, except you're not doing it accidentally and you're not smeared in peanut butter.
That's what you
all
think.
The time. Okay, not visibly. That.
Right. Just all in the pants.
Oh.
Extra crunchy.
Ew.
That's probably why Belinda stopped getting extra crunchy. She's like, only creamy for you, stinky pants. So this show was very much that. Like my entire experience as a college student, growing up being in a small town and being exposed to way more than my trauma brain could handle, got put into that and Alice in Wonderland flavored.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah, you've talked about your love of Alice on the show before.
Yeah. And what's the most important to understand is that this is the hardest I'd ever tried to create something. Like, when I say that is the very, very best I could do, I mean it. So I used to run distance, right?
Yeah.
And the mile was my event. And after you'd finish your fourth lap, you could kind of see like, I had a little bit left in me, right? And then there were the runs where you're like, I had nothing left in me. If I had taken like 3 more steps or increased my speed just that much more, I would have died. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I get your meaning here.
So there are projects that I've worked on where I'm like, I could have given a little bit more. And there are projects where I'm like, if I'd given an ounce more, I would need to be hospitalized.
Sure.
Which we've been on certain projects where I'm like, yeah, I probably should have been hospitalized after that.
American Curse.
American Curse, specifically. Yeah. American Curse is the film version, equate the film version of the stress and effort put into Saving Alice.
I believe that. I absolutely believe that.
So that brings me to the point of the show. So the crew, the cast, we'd worked really hard to save money to pay for our own adjudicators. Because the whatever wouldn't pay for it.
Like the department?
Yeah,
or okay.
Yeah. Which they normally don't, but there were occasions where they were like, nah, sure. I was not one of those occasions ever. So we did it. We paid for them. They came in. There's like one older looking fellow that like, oh, you are exactly the type of professor person that you would expect to see, but also sometime you would see at church.
Sure. I mean, you just described a wide swath of the IUP faculty, right. But yeah, I get what you mean.
This could be an entire episode. I'm trying to keep it brief. And then the second adjudicator was a woman about middle age.
Okay.
Did the whole show. It was great. It was a great performance. Maybe not our best of like the 6th run, but maybe like our second best.
Okay. Hey, that's not bad.
No, I was very happy with it. We sit down, audience clears out. We sit down, we go to talk through the show. And I'm expecting like notes on like set. Like we went all out for a student production. Like sound, lights, set, costumes, everything. Smoke effects, video effects. And we never got to talk about that because as soon as we sat down and the adjudicators were allowed to talk, I hate to say the female one. I also don't want to give away her identity.
Right. Yeah. No. So, no. We won't include any of that. We'll say
I recognize now she was triggered by the show.
Okay.
She thought it was misogynistic. She thought it was harmful that a male would think this way, because I wrote and directed, obviously.
Right. As you do with most of your projects.
Right. It worried her for the men of college age to think the way that I thought based upon my writing.
That's a lot to say based on creative work.
Yes. And I'll give it to the male adjudicator because he's like, did you want your play to have this kind of effect on a person? And me being young and traumatized by her trauma said no. Where in retrospect, I wish I'd said yes. I do want somebody to be forced to think in an emotional manner.
Okay.
What I don't want is somebody to take from that project, or any project really, that I'm a misogynist.
Right, because you're not.
No. It was a very, sex-heavy show, but, that was a focus. That was a theme.
Yeah. Also, I feel like I should clarify. I said that that's a lot to say about a creative work. That's a lot to say about a student's creative work.
Which I'm going to get to right now. So immediately following that, I'm going to use big swoosh whoosh, heavy quotes, adjudication, because we didn't learn, you're supposed to learn something from the adjudication. All I learned was I'm a piece of shit. First of all, thank you, cast from 12 years ago. You guys were so awesome and supportive. As soon as she left the room, they were like, fuck her. You're awesome. Because we'd really bonded over that project.
I believe that.
We spent the whole summer working on it. And it's weird because I was just upstairs writing a short story where I kind of shit talk this dude. Yeah. But one of the better moments I had with a professor, he took me aside and as politely as he could, because he saw I was reeling. He was like, having an adjudication is good, but it's also important to keep in mind that some people cannot separate themselves from the process of being an adjudicator.
Interesting.
She was reacting on her own shit, right? And she was taking it out on you.
Yeah.
Not the whole cast, not the whole crew, specifically you.
Yeah. Otherwise, you would have delved into the rest of the features of the show and the performances.
Right. And why that's important and why I bring it up is, as I said at the start of this, I could not have tried harder.
Yeah.
I put all of myself and my money and my time into this. And if that is the best play that I could put on, and I get that reaction from somebody who's supposed to be an authority, keep in mind I'm 22 at this point, so I haven't completely done away with all people are idiots and I just don't do what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
If I'd gotten the same reaction from that person today, I would take the criticism, think about it, see what applies and see what doesn't apply, and then throw away the rest. But at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm done being a director. I'm not going to direct anymore. I'm not going to write anymore. I can't do better than I've done. So I quit. And that was the mindset I had. And then after talking to that professor and then talking to my cast and crew who featured several feminists, and they're like, no, that was very toxic second wave shit. Don't you worry.
Harkening back to our discussion of second and third wave feminism from the last episode.
So the way that relates to Heaven's Gate is criticism can have a very negative effect on an individual, on an artist.
Yeah.
It is just words, but those are words. If you're a writer, if you're a critic, you're writing, you know that what you say has punch. And when we get into talking about Michael Cimino, the criticism he received on Heaven's Gate had a huge effect on his career.
A staggering effect.
Enormous. On the entire film industry. And I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about that in depth, particularly with our guest.
Absolutely. But I needed to put you all through my therapy session first. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to talk about this objectively.
Fair.
I would just be screaming into the ceiling.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Hey, let's bring on our guest, Meow. Hey, Antonio, welcome. Hi, hello. I want to welcome you to the last episode of DeRazzled ever. We're canceled. I'm canceling us.
It was a good run.
Yeah, thank you.
This is news to me.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was coming.
I did kind of tell you, like, hey, here's what the episode should be called, but without saying why exactly. So thank you, Internet, Antonio. Fantastic final guest. So glad to have you. We're gonna hop right in now that everybody's on the same page that this is the last episode of DeRazzled ever. You heard it here first.
I don't believe you, but okay.
Welcome to DeRazzled, the podcast.
I know you're kind of giving it like the Seinfeld curse, man. Like you just hyped it up as the last episode ever, and now it's gonna suck.
Yeah. And welcome aboard. Welcome to DeRazzled, the podcast that takes award-winning worst films and fixes them. I'm host Jack Culbertson, and here to suffer alongside me, as always, is also host Joe Nealis.
Good evening, everybody.
Today we're presenting the second part of the Cultworthy DeRazzled crossover. If
Woo!
You haven't listened to the first part, don't be an asshole. Go listen to it.
You should do that. Genuinely, I listened to it today on my way home from work, and it was just as fun to listen to as it was to do.
Yeah, I know, wasn't it?
It really was. Just,
but no, for real, get going.
Go on.
I'm not gonna just go on, get. No, don't go. We're so lonely here. Don't go. Oh God. But we're less lonely than normal because we have the Cultworthy Podcast host Antonio with us. Hi, Antonio.
Hi guys, great to be on the show. Great to see you on this side of the camera instead of like being the one trying to like run everything. I can just kind of sit over here and just. I'm not even wearing pants, you know.
Perfect.
There's no need.
To be fair, it got so hard to adjust to wearing pants again after lockdown ended, so I really don't blame you for returning to that comfort.
I don't even have anything below my torso. Just no meat.
You got rid of your legs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't need them. Not if you're a podcaster.
God, not again.
So usually we pick the Razzie winner picture to suffer through, but instead, Antonio, you picked the form of our destructor.
Yeah.
And
it kind of like we kind of came together on Heaven's Gate. I feel like it was in the ether. You and I were both talking about it, and it just kind of seemed like all perfectly aligned to do this collaboration.
Absolutely.
So to give a brief outline of what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about Cutthroat Island, followed by Heaven's Gate, and then we're going to talk about the Cultworthy show. Before we do any of that, we'd like you to remind you to do things that Joe remembers to say, but I don't.
The podcast things. You should find us and subscribe to us wherever you can, wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening to us now. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your therapists, and please rate and review wherever you can to help other people discover us more easily.
Beautiful.
Yes.
So much like what we had to do when actually watching the movies, we're going to suffer through Cutthroat Island to get to Heaven's Gate. So normally I write out a very long summary, kind of really sticking it to the script.
I shouldn't say normally. You've kind of evolved into writing a very long summary.
Yeah, I'll attest to that. They were kind of small at first, and I think he just likes to hear himself talk.
I'm a frustrated novelist.
I think cats broke you is the problem.
I'm not the same man I once was. But for this one, I didn't even write a summary. I just said summarize Cutthroat Island, which I will do now, but we'll need help with. So imagine all of the pirate movie cliches, even that one. Get rid of all the good dialogue. There's no good dialogue. Get your uncle, get him a little drunk, get him a beast, let him write the dialogue. The end.
Okay. You forgot to mention spend $114 million on it.
I did. That is very important.
You also forgot to say cast your wife in it.
Yeah, that's always a good idea. Always a good idea.
Nothing against Gina Davis, but
no, I like her.
I love Gina Davis, but weird choice for this.
I thought Matthew Modine was the weirder choice, but I actually kind of liked him in it.
I didn't mind him at times.
Well, I mean, if we're going to jump into this, you realize it was supposed to be Michael Douglas originally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Which makes way more sense.
I mean, we talked about this on the last show, the Pierce Brosnan Ed Burns swap. This is something of the same caliber.
And oddly enough, same connected director.
I know, it's something. Like, can we do a season just dedicated to Rennie Harlan?
I don't know if my brain can handle that, honestly. Cutthroat Island and oh shoot, Sound of Thunder.
Yeah,
you were going to call it Time Wave.
I was going to call it Sound of Silence, but
no, that's something completely different.
I thought he was going to say Sound of Music, and I was like,
all better options than what we actually watched.
Jokes that had more legs than I thought it did.
So now that we've summarized the movie, I'm going to run through some stats real quick. So it was only nominated for Worst Director, which it lost.
I believe that year the winner was Paul Verhoeven for Showgirls.
Yes,
I believe so.
Which is yet again a movie being saved by Showgirls from winning a Razzie, because Waterworld didn't win Worst Picture because of Showgirls, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Showgirls.
Yes. But there's a theme there too, because you've got Showgirls and Paul Verhoeven, a filmmaker who have been defended and re-examined as, underappreciated genius film, underappreciated genius director. You cannot say any of those words in the same sentence with Cutthroat Island and Rennie Harlan.
Not with a straight face. Certainly not.
So let's run through some stats real quick. Antonio, what do you think maybe you don't know. Hopefully you don't know. What is the general Rotten Tomatoes score for Cutthroat Island?
Oh, see, that one I don't know. So how about you hit me with that?
I want you to guess.
I have to guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say 8%.
Whew. Vicious.
Wow. I mean, not what it actually deserved, but what the audience, for the general, it has a 38.
Wait, the critic score for this is a 38?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
What's the audience?
40.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That might be the closest we've ever seen those scores.
Both audience and critics were kind of like, meh.
I mean, fair.
Well, I'm also thinking that, there's a large majority of people that never even bothered to see it. So we're just kind of talking to the minority of the 6
people.
I mean, to be honest, I've never clicked that aggregator myself on any movie, and I know I got opinions.
There were the six critics that talked about it and their 6 partners, just.
And everyone was like, meh.
Meh.
How about IMDb Score, which normally I agree with, out of 10?
I'm going to say IMDb 4.7.
I would have given it like a 4. Just 4, actually. No, it doesn't get anything past a 4.
Just an even 4?
That's what I would give it.
Okay.
It has a 5.7.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
IMDb coming in to try to redeem it a little bit.
Right.
Interesting.
It's weird how little I enjoyed this movie, but the numbers that it got.
Yeah, honestly, I would have guessed much lower on the critical score for Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. Definitely higher for the audience score. I'm so used to the audiences being more forgiving that it's just like that went out the window with this one.
I think I want to email everyone who rated it personally and ask them to go rewatch it, because I'm pretty sure they're just going off of their childhood memories of seeing it in the theater in 1994.
That could be it.
I have a theory based around that. Before we hopped on, Joe and I were going through the movies that were released that year.
True, yeah, because this released, I believe, in '95, and that was a wild year for movies.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of movies that are not great from that year, but people think they're great because of childhood nostalgia.
Yeah.
So because they were so busy watching Clueless and Batman Forever, they actually didn't watch Cutthroat Island, and therefore, no nostalgia.
They may have been aware of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, guys. I remember seeing this in the theater and thinking that it was great. And then I didn't watch it again until 1999 when I bought the DVD. And on my Instagram a few weeks ago when I was rewatching it, I made a clear point that I did not watch this movie since I bought that DVD in 1998.
Oh my God.
So I really did have a a real long chunk of time and maturity to understand that nostalgia that I had for it was entirely unjustified.
Jack, you can relate to that.
On many fronts, but even that same year, I remember being in theaters and watching Batman Forever and being just the happiest little 7-year-old.
No, that was the first movie that disappointed me.
Which is amazing. It took longer for my taste to evolve.
Well, I mean, I also had the CD to that, and I'm pretty sure, like, I must have bought some memorabilia from that movie.
From Batman Forever?
From Batman Forever,
oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, it definitely had more staying power in my mind than Cutthroat Island did. But also,
Yeah.
I remember in the theater loving the trailer for Cutthroat Island, and I think we get a lot of that where people get so excited for a trailer and it's so good and it's so well edited that when we see a movie in the theater in that younger state of mind, we want that movie to be as good as the trailer, so we make it that good in our psyche.
I think there's something to that.
Yes, I've watched Daredevil. So why do we think this movie failed? Let's say narratively first, as far as like as a piece of art, quote unquote art.
Whew.
I mean, if you want me to go first, I'd love to, because I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks since I watched it.
Please.
And I had to confess that I actually owned it. And to think of all the DVDs that I've like thrifted and gifted in my life, and that somehow made the
that
cut
has survived. That survived so many callings.
It's kind of like what we talked about with the last movie with Baron Munchausen, except the opposite direction. Here we have a movie that is overly ambitious, where they're building pirate ships, they're building seaports, they're building massive worlds for us to explore in. But after doing the research, there still really wasn't that complete of a script, so they were building the world, hoping to fill that world with a script. And I think we've seen movies that have done that and failed terribly.
Mm-hmm.
And when you just keep throwing more money at something, it doesn't fix it. It just makes that gap bigger to fill.
It sure does, and I think it really shows with this. Like the fact that everything is so cookie cutter, the fact that you could see the tropes coming a mile away. Like if you've even heard like a secondhand telling of a pirate story, but it is wild, just like how stark that is.
What you're talking about with starting the production of a film before having a full script and just like pumping more money into it. It reminds me of certain James Bond films where they'll start building the action set pieces. And like, we know James is going to do this here. We'll just make it into the script at some point somehow. And that's what Cutthroat Island feels like. We have the scene where they're riding on horses. We have the scene where there's sword fighting on ships and then the ships fight. But there's so little character driving you from set piece to set piece that I was like... Heaven's Gate is 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
But Cutthroat Island bored the tears out of me.
See, I watched Heaven's Gate first.
Okay.
And then immediately after watched
You fool.
Cutthroat Island. I don't know why I do these things to myself. but yeah, no, it really does feel so much more of a slog than Heaven's Gate does.
Well, I mean, and we've all dabbled in film production. You guys are currently more into it than I am. I spent my late teens and early 20s in it. And like, this is a producer driven film with a yes man director. And I think that's probably Renny Harlin's biggest downfall as a filmmaker, because he does have a good eye and he does have some talent with action scenes.
I'd agree with that.
Action scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's obvious with all the films and the failures he's had, he's like a yes man who's either quit and gotten fired. And this is obviously a film where it's like someone showed a group of people in an office a bunch of different sketches of production art, not filling in what those actually mean to a story or to a film or to a filmmaker and the cast. And now you've got someone who's just running full speed just to catch up with the expectation that these producers have.
Are you going to make me feel bad for Remy Harlem?
That's my goal.
Okay.
I feel bad for Renny Harlin. I mean, the man had such a lustrous ponytail in the 90s, and I feel as each financial failure happened, it got shorter and
Oh
shorter.
no, it's a Samson situation. His ponytail with his source of directorial power.
I'm not familiar with his filmography. Has he done anything that I would enjoy or is enjoyable?
This is the man that made Cliffhanger. And
Okay.
I think Cliffhanger is probably in the top 5 Sylvester Stallone films of all time. He also did Die Hard 2, which I think is an underrated sequel. It's fun, it's cheesy, it's Bruce Willis just mugging. He knew what to do with those, you know?
I forgot
that's the thing,
that
is
he
like-
did Die Hard too. That's
Yeah.
a valid point.
And, oh God, I'm going to like regret this in the morning. I feel like everyone's going to think I'm some kind of like Rennie Harlan scholar, but this dude got fired off of Alien 3.
Oh, he was one
And
of
then
those.
Oh,
Yeah,
that I did not know.
He was the original director for Alien 3.
That is bizarre.
There are still some of his shots in there. David Fincher took over, and that's why his
Yeah.
production was notoriously troubled, because he was taking over for Rennie Harlan, kind of like we talked about with Peter Hyams in
Yeah.
Sound of Thunder.
Right. Oh wow.
So it always feels like someone has to come in and clean up Rennie Harlan's mess. And again, that's part of like, and we'll talk about this with Cimino, but that kind of resurgence of music video directors given big budget films in the 90s is kind of like what happened in the death of New Hollywood with Cimino and Heaven's Gate. They kind of had to learn their lesson all over again. These visionary auteurs, which I have a lot of respect for, but as we've seen, some just do it better than others.
Woof. Sorry, there's so much film history in that statement that my brain had to go through and process it, because it didn't really occur to me that the music video directors of the 90s, some of them were picked besides David Fincher to go into film. No, you're right. I mean, there's a DVD series that used to collect certain music videos and commercials from
The Palm?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had one for like Michel Gondry
And Spike Jones and
yes.
Chris Cunningham. Yeah, I have all those still.
They're amazing. I love them.
nice. I'm gonna have to track those down. I was not aware that was a collection that existed.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Well, once YouTube came out, you didn't need them anymore.
That's fair.
But-
yeah.
But I treasure them because I spent money on them when I was 19.
I bought mine after YouTube existed because fuck it.
Fuck YouTube.
But no, yeah. If I were a producer and I was looking at that body of work from those directors, like hell yeah, I would bring them in to do a movie. And then yeah, just certain people are not fit for that size of a project.
See, my brain is automatically jumped back to Saving Christmas again because I'm traumatized from that, because that fucking director was one of them. He directed all those Blink-182 videos and Pennywise videos and shit.
Which still blows my mind.
Yeah.
Listen, some music video directors are better than others too. Like
Clearly.
not all of the music video directors should do films.
Case in point.
Right, exactly. But with this one, I mean, like, I've said this in the review I put on Letterboxd. Never have I watched a film that had so much in it that actually gave me so little.
Yeah.
That's a good succinct way to put it, I think.
Like, it's basically one giant second act. Like, how many
Yeah.
how many chase scenes through a harbor town or on a pirate ship before we actually get where we're going do we have to go through with this film?
So it's bad. All right, it's bad. but why did it crash commercially?
I think, again, we're talking about producers that didn't understand their audience. Like, there is a history of pirate films that just didn't do well. Roman Polanski's Pirates didn't do well.
Yeah.
Underappreciated film, in my opinion, but not a surprise that it didn't do well. Then you had the pirate movie with Christopher Atkins from Blue Lagoon. Didn't do well. You know, I think apart from the nostalgia of a fucking ride at Disneyland,
Yeah.
people really thought that people wanted to see a pirate film that wasn't made in the 1940s.
Or it starred Muppets.
The Muppets.
What starred Muppets?
Right. It is weird that they tried to resurrect this specific of a genre.
Yeah, I agree. But, I mean, again, this was the 90s, and we're looking at, like, they were kind of blowing through superheroes. They were blowing through alien concepts. You know, we got Stargate. We got Independence Day. We've got a bunch of buddy cop movies coming out in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah.
It feels like it would only make sense to like pick a genre that you could exploit. And I think they really thought they were going to springboard off of this one. I mean, it even sets itself up for a sequel.
It really does. Yeah, like that ending is absolutely trying to be sequel bait. You're 100% correct. That the like genre testing ground theory is really interesting to me too, because again, like looking at the movies that came out this year, the first Bad Boys came out. So like there's your like kind of edgy buddy cop foundation piece right there. You have, oh my God, I mean, you have your over-the-top sci-fi epic with Waterworld. You have so much going on in this year that really like sets the tone for a lot of stuff to come.
And was this the same year as Cable Guy, or was that 96?
That was 96.
So like, I also feel, again, 1995, like you just said, you had the perfect example of just, a testing ground for genres. You see a lot of success in the early 90s, like 93, 94. You see Jurassic Park, you see Pulp Fiction, you see the indie boom, and then you also see 3 Jim Carrey movies come out in the same year.
Yep, because you've got your Ace Venturas and The Mask and
Dumb and Dumber. And then 96 kind of explodes again. 95 was just that middle of the road where I think people were just trying to figure out what is the next big thing, because all these other things worked. We're going to get a new Batman. We're going to get a new Alien movie. We're going to do all this stuff like that. And it kind of just crumbles. It's not a great year for movies when it comes to genre building.
Sure. And what baffles me is the company, Carolco,
yeah,
dumped so much money into this, put all of their eggs in one basket, thinking like, yeah, this will make all the money, before
it broke it.
It broke it
entirely, and they could have had another Paul Verhoeven, Arnold Schwarzenegger film instead.
Oh, that's right. It was like about the Crusades or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And think about this too. Like Rennie Harlin, just the 2 years before this, had directed Cliffhanger and Die Hard 2, really big budget movies. So he seemed like a logical gamble. Like, this guy can throw action on the screen and make it look good. And I don't know. Do you think that star power could have saved this film?
I think the reason that the company sank is not specifically this film. I think this film was the final nail in the coffin. The way that that company blew money in traditional wild 80s
action
cocaine
films.
Fueled, because they bought Schwarzenegger like another personal jet for Total Recall, I want to say. There's like, hey, welcome aboard. Here's your own private jet that we bought for you.
Yeah, like we're already paying you $14 million. Right. Here's a $17 million jet to toy around with as well.
You can't throw that much money around that you don't have and expect to not close down at some point.
Well, they should have learned their lesson from Canon, because Canon failed because of that exact same formula. And here comes Carolco to pick up the pieces that Canon left behind, and they do the exact same thing again.
Yeah.
History doomed to repeat itself.
I don't know. Maybe there's like a secret society behind it, like a new world order of films that just like, they're going to build something up just to crash it,
Yeah, we've all heard of Walt Disney, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's just the mouse slowly taking out the competition, which is a great way to end Act 1. I had nothing.
Thank God.
I got to pay and end it.
All right, yeah, that seems like a good place as any to call a break. So, enjoy an ad, and we will be back after this.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to jump into a movie we'd really prefer to have talked about the entire time. But now we can. We talk about it now.
We can talk about it now. The time has come.
Which is Heaven's Gate by Michael Cimino. Cimino, we don't know.
Yeah, is it Cimino or Cimino? I feel like I hear different pronunciations from different sources.
Pretty much in all the documentaries I watched, it's Cimino.
Cimino.
Huh. With a hard S. Cimino.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
If I fuck it up, Joe, just add a horse whinny over top of it.
I'm just gonna start horse whinnying you at random points.
Shit. Make it just sound like I said something awful derogatory.
Yes, exactly.
Nominated for
Oh no!
Fuck. All right, let's talk about the Razzie noms and win real quick. So it won Worst Director for Michael Cimino. It was nominated for Worst Picture, but lost to Mommy Dearest.
Oh, that's right. It did. It did lose to Mommy Dearest.
This is 1980. So
it was
the first one.
It was 81. No, it was nominated in 81. Movie came out in 80. Was nominated in 81.
Right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they were like a year behind.
Yep.
Nominated for Worst Actor for Chris Christopherson, but lost to Clinton Spilsbury for Legend of the Lone Ranger. It was nominated for Worst Screenplay. Again, lost to Mommy Dearest. Worst Musical Score, which I don't understand why it was nominated for that, but
yeah, I really liked the music in this. Honestly, it
was really good.
And again, it lost to Lone Ranger. So,
all right,
which is a movie I didn't even know existed. So,
honestly, guys, and you know me, I know my movies.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that one either. And like we talked about in the last episode, I think it's a travesty that Mommy Dearest got the best / worst motion picture. I think it's an understood film that's gained a lot of appreciation and a cult following these days. But that's another story.
It is, and I'm excited to cover that one.
I think that is a movie we're going to be covering in season 2 for certain.
General Rotten Tomatoes score. What are we thinking here?
I'm going to say high. I'm going to give it like a 6.9.
Nice.
Thank you.
For tomatoes? For the percentage?
Oh, we're talking about tomatoes.
Yes. Yeah.
Tomatoes,
like,
I'm going to say, those tomatoes, guys, they're a little bit rough. So I'm going to say the average score is probably 43.
70, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy
that's critics.
shit.
Yeah. And we'll get into this, but the opinion of Heaven's Gate has changed drastically.
I was going to say that's got to be like a recent change then, like over the last few years.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I imagine that originally the Rotten Tomatoes score was probably a lot lower.
14. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I'm kidding. I don't know.
Fuck you.
And the audience score, and I don't believe this. I'm like, was I blind when I learned this? 79.
79.
I mean, yeah. I would rate it very high myself, but again, we are dealing with multiple versions of a movie, multiple cuts, multiple edits. For example, if we were to go off of the television edit of Once Upon a Time in America, that is a terrible film. If you go and watch the almost 4-hour long version, as long and dry as it is a masterpiece, and this kind of fills that same mold.
Yeah. I was thinking of that movie a lot as well. While
I still
watching
haven't seen it.
And then last score, IMDb out of 10.
I'm sticking with 6.9, guys.
Excellent.
7.6.
Not far off.
Yeah.
Not far off.
And then before we jump into the critique and criticism, do you want to talk about dogs? You like dogs, right?
I love dogs. You know me. I love dogs. So something that Jack had never heard of that I introduced him to recently is the website doesthedogdie.com, which is a wonderful resource if you are concerned about content warnings or of course, in particular, if there's a dog in a movie and it dies. It's expanded over the years to include content warnings for a whole slew of different things, including sexual assault, including
blood, gore,
swearing. Violence, swearing, so on and so forth, all sorts of stuff. Alcohol abuse,
dragons.
Wait, really? Dragons?
Yeah,
is one of these people? Oh, that's weird.
I dug pretty deep in that website. I'm like, so someone out there is really afraid of dragons.
Somebody out there is apparently really afraid of dragons, which I
are they afraid of cruelty to dragons?
Are they afraid of cruelty to dragons? Yeah. Does the dragon die?
Does the dragon die? That's my concern, because if it dies, I'm not watching it.
And that's why this site exists.
No, but yeah, no. If that's a thing that you are concerned about going into a movie, you can go in and sometimes it offers spoilers, sometimes it doesn't. But it'll help front load you and allow you to mentally prepare for those things. And some of those things are very relevant to this movie.
Yes.
In particular, if you have not seen this movie, I will issue a content warning for sexual assault, for violence against women, for abuse of animals in particular. Oh man, some stuff happened to some animals on this set.
And a damn fine mustache.
Content warning for a damn fine mustache.
There's so many.
There's so many.
Content warning for too many fine mustaches. And one
I
very
think
awkward
that's-
cockfight.
I think that. Whoa, what? I think that this film started off like the first draft was a mustache, and then
A mustache
fade
appears
in
on the horizon.
a mustache, fade out the mustache.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot of great mustaches in this movie, guys. We can get into those. I'm sorry, I just
The
totally.
storyboard was wild. Just a bunch of mustaches and horses.
Push brooms and handlebars as far as the eye could see.
So I just wanted to, because there's certain times whenever I'm watching a movie, I'm like, I don't have the stomach for certain things. And I think that website would be very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I've never heard of it. I'm gonna have to check it out.
So let's talk about, God, there's so much to talk about with this movie. I'm like, where do we even want to start? I want to save the critical response
For
last.
later.
and analysis for later. But the actual process of the film becoming as infamous as it has become, I'd like to talk about that now.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to just kind of jump in and say, like, the only version I had seen until I watched it earlier this week was the 151-minute VHS cut. So I'd seen the extremely truncated version back in my early 20s when I was, like, diving into the films of filmmakers that I liked.
Mhm.
And I hated it. I really agreed with a lot of the things that I had heard and read, because I had gone through that whole phase of hearing bad things about certain films, like Blade Runner. When I was a teenager, people just shat on Blade Runner, and then the director's cut came out in 92. It was released DVD in 95, and it changed my whole opinion on Blade Runner. And then retroactively, I started loving the original cut and the work print, and it's my favorite movie of all time. This kind of has that same feeling, because I walked into this 220-minute cut with the same opinion I had of the 150-minute cut. And it totally reevaluated how I felt about this film, and now I will swing swords for it. I think this film is amazing.
I agree. I think there are some things that could be tweaked. I think there's some things it could do without, but overall, absolutely incredible cinematic feat.
Do we really
Yes.
quickly, do we want to cover the different versions?
If we want, like,
Please.
I know that there's a 150-minute cut. I know that there was, like, an extended work print cut, and then there was the final cut. And this is the thing, is like Semino's released a few different final cuts of this.
Yeah.
But generally, when I watched this on Amazon and kind of looked it up, this is kind of known as the festival cut.
Interesting.
So I think
it's
the version I watched was a Criterion version. Is that the one you're referring to?
It may be. I didn't look into it that much, but this is it's a 220-minute cut, which I think is the longest one there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also watched the one that's up on Amazon. That is, that was which was absolutely fantastic.
I went into this movie with the same feeling I go into any movie I watch for this podcast, which is I'm bracing myself to throw up. And aside from it being a slow burn, which you look at the runtime, you kind of have to know that going in.
Yeah, no, I'm not expecting an almost 4-hour movie to be a mile a minute thrill ride.
No.
Yeah, there's very few movies that can pull that off. I think Gone with the Wind may be the closest to being that almost 4-hour runtime that doesn't really try your patience too much. Like it's got a good enough flow all the way throughout, and there's enough character development, but also it spans years.
Mhm.
This spans like what? A couple weeks?
Months. Yeah.
Couple months maybe?
I think I mean, if you take overall time jumps, there's definitely years involved there.
Yeah.
But I think like the actual, like ignoring the prologue, like the actual bulk
And the
of
epilogue.
Story, and the epilogue, the actual bulk of the story. Yeah, I would say a matter of months.
So I watched this movie, and as I slowly, I'm like, oh, this isn't a bad movie. This is really good.
What I would say is that this is a good movie, but there is too much movie.
There is too much movie. I absolutely agree. Which, it occurs to me, Jack, you said it's up to me to describe this damn movie.
Oh, right.
I
Yeah,
never
we
actually
didn't describe
did
the movie.
that.
Oh, shit. Yeah, Joe, you want to summarize this movie for those who have not seen it?
Imagine you just graduated from college. What do you picture yourself doing? Do you picture yourself traveling? Do you picture yourself riding horses? Do you picture yourself having an amazing gun battle with a bunch of immigrants against the United States cavalry? Well, then you are Chris Christopherson.
And the rest of us just have to run from debt collectors. Short version is that this is a story about, or this is a dramatization of the was it the Johnson County War? I think so, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, which was a conflict between cattle barons and poor farmers and immigrants trying to get by who were stealing cattle.
This could almost play like a sequel to Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, because that movie kind of like ends with all of these immigrants going out there and claiming a stake in their land without any real opportunity or any real knowledge. They're just out there to live off the land. And then you've got these people with money who are going out there and actually setting up real ranches and cattle barren plantations, you could say, and be like, oh, now we got to deal with these immigrants, and that's where this all kind of comes into. So if you want a 6-hour double feature, watch Far and Away.
So Far and Away is a prequel to Heaven's Gate.
Oh, incredible.
It is now. I just decided
It is now. I've accepted this headcanon.
Somebody call up Tom, let him know. Holy shit. Antonio, tell me if you've ever had this happen to you where you'll watch a movie and you're not quite sure how you feel about it, but you can't stop thinking about it over the next couple of days or couple of weeks. And it just slowly digs into your mind and you're like, actually, I love this movie now.
Yeah, I have the perfect one. Requiem for a Dream.
Okay.
I saw in the theater when it came out, and I think it was like 2003. I bought the DVD. It's still in its wrapper because I don't want to watch it again because I love thinking about it so much.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Huh.
And this movie kind of like would do that to me. I get where you're coming from. Again, like I had the disadvantage of seeing the bad version of it. So this was kind of like a rebirth for me. It's not a rediscovery, it's a rebirth. And I'm still thinking about a lot of stuff that was in it that just keeps shaking me, which we'll get into, I'm sure.
So the biggest difference that I saw between the earlier cuts and versions and the one that I think we all watched is the color grade was changed.
Drastically.
Significantly.
Yeah. The removal of the sepia tone that so many critics just harped on so hard.
Like, I'm definitely going to tell them to go fuck themselves, but I'm like, but on that one thing, no, that's all right.
I mean, like, that was kind of a Western trope for so long, was just like that kind of filtering. But
yeah, well, you've also got Vilmos Zsigmond, one of the most amazing cinematographers of all time. He did a lot of Westerns. He did McCabe and Mrs. Miller with Robert Altman. And if you wanted cinematography, this was the guy you went to. But he was also kind of wacky. And so it was his idea to pump all of that smoke and steam of what like a pre-industrial Midwest village and town would be like. And I bet that was one of the hardest things to kind of like remove in color grade, because you've just got all that steam and smoke everywhere, saturating those scenes.
Yep.
So it was his idea, not Cimino's, to do that.
I would say
a collaboration, probably
a collaboration, but also you've got two madmen on the set,
right?
You know?
Yeah. Just, I think I saw a picture of the two of them just like standing next to each other talking about something. It was like, this is just looking at them. If I didn't even know who they were, like, this looks like a conversation that's going to spawn insanity. I don't know what's going to come out of this.
And to think about it, they both won Oscars just a few years earlier for Deer Hunter.
Absolutely.
So, not to sound crude, but they had big balls, both of them.
Yeah.
At this moment, they're like, nothing can fuck with us.
They're on top of the world.
We're going to do whatever we want. And
so
well, they did. They tried.
They did.
As much as I really enjoy this movie, it, much like the last movie we talked about, it ended the studio. that made it. United Artists, which was a much bigger studio than
I mean, and
older
and
and
much
oh my God.
older as it was
Such a bummer.
It was the first independent studio or
like major independent. Yeah.
yeah.
Like Chaplin and all the silent stars put it together
Mary
to get away from the
Pickford,
studio
yeah.
system.
Yeah, what the Great Dictator would not have happened if it weren't for this.
Nope.
And I was thinking about this while I was in the bathroom.
During your 3-hour piss break.
Right. I needed to think about it scene by scene.
You went, you peed, you watched the whole movie again.
Yeah.
I was expecting him to come back with just an awesome mustache and no beard.
Shit, I really should.
He's like,
Great
now
idea.
I'm ready.
I'm Christopherson at the end of the movie.
Okay, there you go.
Sad and broken on a boat.
broken on a boat. That's the Jack Culbertson story. Anyway. So I respect the hell out of United Artists for saying, like, we do not mess with the artist, right? Cool. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
But if let's say I'm donating blood, right? And I'm a giving person. I'm like, I want to save as many people with my great Jack blood as possible. A positive. You're welcome. At some point, I'm going to be like, hey, nurse, you still going, huh? You're going to
You're just adding on another bag, huh?
you're going to leave any from... No, I respect what you're doing. No, I respect, you're the expert.
Hey, my vision's getting fuzzy.
But
Can you stop? No?
At some point, you're the producer or the studio working on this film. You're like, listen, we want you to do your thing, but we're out of money. Like, when do you cut that off?
Well, I mean, this is a life lesson for many a filmmaker now because of that, and if you've read the book or seen the documentary Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, which is all about New Hollywood. It's all about people like Robert Evans taking over production at Paramount and getting people like Roman Polanski and Coppola and Scorsese coming on the scene in De Palma, like filmmakers that we revere to this day. If you were talking about Cimino during that time, that is where he was. He was with this pantheon of people.
Yeah.
And he kind of had to be the sacrificial lamb. He was the one that just took it a little too far and is kind of spoken of almost like a derogatory statement. Like, I've heard people say, oh, great, I just got Cimino'd. It's become a verb,
Ooh.
And I was thinking about that too, because you're right. He was part of the New Hollywood group of fellas. But even George Lucas and Ford Coppola had to put up their own money with their films at a certain point, whereas Cimino didn't. And that's, if we're not doing a fix on this movie because it doesn't really need it. But if I were to suggest one thing, it would be that the producer's like, here's your budget. Anything else you want to do, that's coming out of your paycheck. That's you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, this is going to sound like super pretentious, which I do that.
Sure.
And I'm going,
you're in good company. It's okay.
But when I say it before I do it, it makes it all better, right?
That's how it works.
So we all know the story behind Apocalypse Now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
The difference is Coppola took all that money because he knew how to stretch a dollar and he knew how to wheel and deal with the Filipino government to get their entire army to fly helicopters over the beach. He knew how to, he knew how to do all that stuff. Cimino was playing with the casino's money. That's the difference. He was playing in their house on their grounds with the casino's money, and they just kept giving him marker after marker, hoping that he could pay it back. He wasn't like, you know what, I'm going to go do some back alley deals like Coppola did to make his masterpiece. And I think that's one of the things we see. And as much as I've kind of regretted the decline of Robert Rodriguez in the last decade, he kind of had the right idea. Money doesn't fix everything. It just shows how uncreative and how unresilient you are when the money goes away. And I feel that was a lesson learned in this film, and that's why we didn't see this 220-minute cut until almost 40 years later, where if they would have released this cut back then, we might have had a different opinion about this film when it comes to the critics and how it was respected during award season. It probably wouldn't even be a Razzie.
Possibly.
There's this movie or this project I used to pitch to Scott when we were bored. Scott's our filmmaking partner for Ramming Speed. I was like, what if we had a show where we took our tour directors, let's say Chris Nolan, for example, because I think Interstellar had just come out, and we gave him the budget of his first feature and told him, Chris, you are making a feature, but you have the budget of your first movie, maybe your second one, depending.
That would be fascinating.
I like it. It's like a reverse blank check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it forces these people that have become reliant on money or all the resources they now have. I feel like some people get lazy. Some directors get lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think there's something to that.
I would love to see what like a Tarantino would do with like, here's the budget you had on Reservoir Dogs.
Part of me wants to take that even further and see what they can do with no budget whatsoever. If they have to do what we did and pull a knife breaker.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just
here, you get to live in this apartment that you have paid rent for a month.
So for Jack's birthday one year, we did we called it a film fire drill, where we wrote a really quick short script in a night. Took a week to cast it and gather what resources we possibly could, and
rehearse it,
and then shot it in a single weekend. It's actually up on Vimeo. It's called Knife Bricker: The Brickening.
Frustratingly, people seem to like it more than are serious with it.
I know,
which is upsetting, but
it's incredibly stupid, and we're very proud of how stupid and fun it is. But then we did like a serious short, like longer short film that we kickstarted.
Yeah.
Like
people
it
are
didn't
like,
get
yeah,
nearly
but
as
that's
much
not Knife
attention.
Bricker. Like, where's Knife Bricker? I'm like, no, okay.
Well, I think at one of the film festivals that Jack took it to, he actually got brought up on stage with some other directors, and they were asking like, "What was your budget for this?" And like, there were some people from LA. They were like, "Oh, we had like
thousands.
We had like $50,000 or something." like, what you and Mike were up there like, "Oh, I think maybe we had $50,
maybe 50,
maybe.
Most of that was for snacks.
Most of that was for snacks."
Anyway, the opposite of Knife Bricker, Heaven's Gate. It's
a hell of a spectrum.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to say about it before we talk about the critical response?
So I know we said like, you know, we're not doing a fix for this, but I think there are certain things that I would have liked to have seen done just to like kind of streamline some things and like get things moving a little bit more. Like I think that you could have done some of the lead up to the graduation sequence while the opening credits were running, just to like kind of get that moving a little bit faster. I think we could do without the rape scene as much, you know, as much as like, you know, like the as like visceral and infuriating as much as that drives some change and character growth in a number of people.
I would raise two questions in that. One, is that historically accurate? If not, change.
That's a fair question. I didn't really have time to research the historical accuracy of a lot of these things. I do remember seeing that like the way that Nate Champion goes out is accurate.
Because Ebert was like, "That's ridiculous bullshit."
And it turns out it's actually what happened to him. But aside from that, I'm not really sure what fits accurately in terms of the real Johnson County War.
But you can have some other kind of scene that justifies her like really wanting to stay. That's not that.
Yeah, I mean, so let's kind of like narrow it down to like the four main characters of this film to kind of see like what could stay and what could go. Because here's my thing with this. As much as Chris Christopherson is like the leading guy in this, I still think that this is Nate's movie, even though he goes out 2/3 into the film. And the reason why I say that is because Chris Christopherson's character, first of all, I don't think we needed the graduation scene. I think that could have easily been done with like either quick exposition or exposition within Act 2 to explain his connection to John Hurt as Billy. I feel that was just kind of, again, this is Michael Cimino kind of waxing poetic, having these waltz scenes that look like they're out of a Renoir painting just because he wants to have this spectacle on the screen. And I think that's where, like, I'm a movie lover, and that's why I love this film. I think a person who just wants to watch a movie, that's who was rating this film. That's who was determining this film's success at the time. They don't care about your references. They don't care about how many extras you fill onto a screen. They want a story. They don't want it that long. So I get why it failed at this time.
Before we jump into what can stay and can go, I want to take the other side of it and say I don't want to cut anything. Maybe change some certain, like, you didn't actually have to hurt animals to do your fucking movie.
Yeah, didn't a horse get blown up?
That'll
There's
happen
a
to
lot
horses.
of stuff that happens to animals. Yeah.
But if I am, so like I'd watched Deer Hunter before this. I really enjoyed it. It is another movie that's super long. That the first act is just a wedding that goes on a very long time.
Yeah.
When I sit down to watch Heaven's Gate, I want to watch a Michael Cimino movie. Like, I am investing in that flavor. I'm not the general audience.
Yeah. That's why it has a Criterion edition now. It's been made for people like us that want to watch that. I'm just saying why it failed and why it got like the raspberry at the time. But like with the characters, like, I think that it's Nate's movie because he has the biggest redemption story. And
oh yeah, easily.
When I was watching this film, it kind of reminded me, and this is like a weird thing, it reminded me of LA Confidential, where Nate is kind of like the Jack Vincennes character who's just all wheeling, dealing, shady business, doing his own thing for his own benefit. He grows a heart and he is punished for it. Where Chris Christopherson is kind of like the Russell Crowe character. He's tough, but he's got like a mindset of rules and he doesn't break them until it's time to break them. And he ends up getting the girl. And then you've got Frank Canton, played by Sam Waterston, who blew me away in this cut because they gave him so much more screen time. This guy's usually a nice guy, and I just wanted to kill this guy at every turn.
He was such
probably
an ass.
one of my favorite performances in the movie. Like, I just kind of got a lot of just character echoes from films that I've seen that I really enjoyed, and I think that's what made me enjoy the second go around, because I'm like, oh, I like this character arc. I like this character arc. I like this character arc. Unfortunately, what's her name? Ella?
Yeah.
She doesn't get as much of a character arc throughout the film until she's like all guns a-blazing at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
If I had to go back and change anything, which we'll get into later, I'm just saying that, like, I think that her being like the victim and just kind of like the object of a love triangle, which did work for the story, I think she could have done a lot more. She could have been a lot more. They owed her a lot more.
Yeah.
I can see that. And I'm trying to think back to Deer Hunter, to Meryl Streep's character, and she does have more of an arc, not as much as like De Niro or Christopher Walken. I'm wondering if you take, like, one of the complaints about this film was that it wasn't very character driven, which I don't know that I agree with.
Yeah, I wholly disagree with that.
I wonder if
again, we're talking about a cut that most of us haven't seen.
Yeah, that's, and like everything I'm going to say after this about the critical response is, it's really hard to say. I'm still going to say it, but because I haven't watched this cut. And you spoke about Blade Runner earlier. The first cut I had watched was the 92 director's cut. And I loved it. And then only later did I go back and watch the theatrical cut, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe that wasn't so good. I wonder if shaving things down to be a more character-driven movie would alter the style of the film too much. Because you can bring out, like, you can make Chris Walken, you can add more to his character, make his motivation more known. You can add more to Ella. But, like, what I want to, like, for me, this movie was more about class warfare. It wasn't really about, like, these individual characters and, like, their wants and needs. so much as like they are affected by a circumstance that is beyond their control.
Yeah, it's a landed class lashing out against people struggling to survive.
Yeah. And, to play devil's advocate a little bit, as much as I love this movie, there is some insincerity there, though, because this is a film made by people with money
Right.
that really focuses on a class that has none. In fact, they're getting robbed the second they get into town and killed just because they're poor and immigrants and no one's defending them. So there is a little bit of like using that as a plot driver. And it merely makes me think that Chris Christopherson's character is not meant to be like the focal point of the film, as his story is more of the thing that moves the film along so other characters can play around it.
He kind of has what I call Buffy syndrome, where in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you have Buffy to force the story forward, but it's all the characters surrounding her that get the character development and plot.
That might be the most eloquent phrase about Buffy the Vampire Slayer I've ever heard anywhere.
I've thought about it a lot.
Who's the Xander in Heaven's Gate?
Kudos to you.
It's Jeff Bridges.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, that's perfect, actually. Yeah.
Where the hell did he come from? I was like, I did not expect you to be here, Jeff.
He actually has some experience working with Cimino in the past.
Thunderfoot in... I can't remember the name of the film. It was him and Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. He plays a car thief, I think, or at least there's like a particular scene where he steals a car off of a lot that I remember being pretty entertaining.
Yeah, he's just the young punk in that film.
Yeah. So there was already a connection there. Like he knew he could pull Jeff Bridges into this for a role, and I'm really glad he did because I liked his character a lot. Cockfighting aside,
Right. The movie is Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
There we go.
And I was saying Thunderfoot and Lightning Bolt.
It was close. Alternate universe version of the film.
That's the sequel. There it is.
Right.
Yeah. And also, too, guys, there's a lot of characters that we are introduced to. Like, Brad Dourif is in this film. He has, like, fourth or fifth billing, but he's barely in any scenes. There was, like, a 5-hour cut of this film where his role was apparently a lot longer. And in the 150-minute cut, Jeff Bridges' part is incredibly small.
Yeah.
You pretty much see him right at the beginning during the cockfighting scene, and then you see him at the end during the battle. Like, they cut out a lot of people's expositions in that truncated version.
I'm not surprised. I mean, to cut it that hard, that's almost 2 complete hours of material, just lost.
We ready to shit on some critics?
Always.
Great.
Always, because I could go like another 2 hours.
So
let's shit on some critics.
I'm going to read a quote from Vincent Canby's review of Heaven's Gate, which I want to say was after the first live viewing.
Yeah. This is after the initial premiere.
Mm-hmm. Heaven's Gate, which opens today at the Cinema One, fails so completely that you might suspect Mr. Camino sold his soul to the devil to obtain the success of the deer hunter, and the devil has just come around to collect. I'm going to jump ahead to another quote from that review. The grandeur vision of the Vietnam film that had turned pretentious. The feeling for character has vanished, and Mr. Camino approaches to his subject is so predictable that watching the film is like a forced 4-hour walking tour of one's own living room. Heaven's Gate is something quite rare in movies these days, an unqualified disaster. And then I have another quote from Roger Ebert, who won a Pulitzer, which I was not aware of.
Wait, you mean Ebert had, or for this he had?
No, not for this. In general, he had.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised he won one at some point. It would be kind of wild if it was for this.
They just really like this review. This movie is 36 million thrown to the winds. It is the most scandalous cinematic waste I have ever seen. And remember, I've seen Paint Your Wagon. So let me get a real quick let me remind you guys that I am canceling the show after this episode.
Sure. Yeah.
And the effect that these two voices had on not just the movie and the director and the studio, but also the style of filmmaking at the time was huge. And it boggles my mind that you have these voices that affect the art of filmmaking so much that they're like, let's do big blockbuster movies from now on. Let's kind of move away from the auteur, which, like, I'm not saying like all 80s movies that are action movies are bad, just that my personal favorite era of filmmaking is New Hollywood. And I also think that it's possible that the American public was just ready to move away from the more self-reflective era of New Hollywood.
I mean, possibly.
But also, Roger Ebert can go fuck himself.
I think even more so,
Vincent Canby can also go fuck himself.
Yeah, I mean, given they're both dead,
but they could die again.
They just like Canby in particular, because I, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he do like the exact opposite and shit all over Empire Strikes Back and call that boring too?
He said it was boring, which I'm like, we did not watch the same movie, sir.
Like no, no, you just don't know what you're talking about, Vinny.
I mean, yeah, and again, we're talking about like middle-aged guys back then who are trying to explain what they're seeing that's new, that's different, and their opinion's obviously going to be biased. And I always throw this back at Roger Ebert, like, you wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Right.
Who are you to say that this movie is campy and terrible?
Which has its place, but it's also campy and terrible.
Yeah,
it has its place, but it's also campy and terrible. Like, when I dropped out of the film production world, I went to culinary school, became a chef, and I'm still in the culinary world. And I do this podcasting and blogging as like my way to stay a little bit attached to the umbilical,
Sure.
And there is a thing that we always say in the culinary world: when you can't be a chef, you become a health inspector. And if you I feel like
that.
That's amazing. I'm stealing that.
I feel like so many of these critics of the day dipped their toe either into writing or filmmaking and producing, and they just couldn't fucking do it. And so they're like, you know what? I'm going to go write 500 words on this movie and put in some real zingers, and people are going to buy the Sunday edition just to read my shit so I can get back at this industry that shit on me. That's my opinion of film critics from back then, and that's my opinion of paid film critics now. We don't need these people. We've got so many people who can get on Twitter and either pump a movie up or drag it down. We don't need to pay someone's salary to do this. It's a lost art.
Before we recorded this episode, I was like, there's certain people that are really not into, but they have a certain respect for film critics. And I was like, I didn't know where Antonio fell on this. I'm like, is this going to be like a fight? And I was ready to put up a fight and be like, no, they can all go fuck themselves. And you pretty much just covered everything I needed to cover. So thank you.
It's a good thing this is your last episode.
Yeah, right.
I know. Yeah.
And that brings me to my next point. If film critics can have such a negative effect on an art form, does DeRazzled, which does critique films, need to exist? Do we need critics at all? And should we ourselves go fuck ourselves?
No. Because we are conscientious objectors in the sense that we're not getting paid by a studio or by a media corporation to do this. We're barely getting paid at all, if at all.
No, we're constantly losing money.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, like, I actually was like, do I need to file a tax return for the $12 I made in ads for Anchor this year? I don't know. But
that reminds me, we have to file our film taxes.
Oh, Jesus.
Again, and let the IRS know that we've still not made a single dollar.
Not even once.
You got 2 months to do it. But yeah, we have every right to do this because we paid to see these movies, and we are paying to talk about them. We are paying for utilities. We're paying for web space. We're paying stuff to do this. It's our right to do that, just as it's the right for people to listen to us do it. The people that get paid six figures to talk shit on a movie, I want to see that shit go away.
Yes, I agree. I agree completely. I do want to say that even us schmucks, I think it's important for us to be aware that our words do hold weight, even if it's just a little tiny bit.
Yeah, I think that there's some validity to that. Like being aware of the impact of our words and like how we can influence other people's thinking on these things is a worthwhile, act of self-reflection and a good way to like, keep yourself in check. I think.
I agree, but at the same time, it's like we all started a podcast because we listened to a podcast.
Also true.
We listened to someone talking about a movie, whether it was pro or con, and we had a different opinion, and we're like, well, I have an opinion too. Do I feel confident in my vocabulary and in my train of thought to speak for an hour and a half to 2 hours to either everyone in the world or nobody in the world? I feel that kind of like gives us a little bit more... It gives us less responsibility because we're not getting paid for it, but it gives us more accountability for people that are listening to us because it's also encouraging to them to start conversations. Critics don't want to hear your opinion. They don't want to hear you criticize or deconstruct them. So that's why there is an aggregator for critics and an aggregator for audiences on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
Just like Heaven's Gate, it's a separation of the classes.
It's tied it all together.
There it is.
So we are different in that we encourage conversation and debate, whereas a critic, they are laying down their law, saying everyone should feel that way. Is that
who do you answer to? You don't answer to anybody.
As a critic, or me?
A critic has an editor. A critic has a guy that's paying their salary. A critic has someone at the end of the day, unless you are top of the line. And even if you're top of the line, you're still answering to somebody. Tomorrow you could edit all of my stuff out if you wanted to and just play you guys talking, which would sound weird.
That would be
but
really
you can
weird.
do it. You could do it.
There'd be so much awkward silence. Some John Cage bullshit right there.
Random laughing.
But yeah, I mean, and I promise I've only had one martini. I'm just a little loose-lipped tonight.
Oh, hell yes. Oh, my God.
So I guess I won't cancel DeRazzled.
Are you sure? You were really set on it.
Joe, he's got a plan. I can see it in his face. He's going to cancel it. He's going to wait 3 months, and then you guys are going to premiere Re-Razzled, the sequel to this.
Re-DeRazzled.
That's part 3.
That's part 3. Oh, good Lord. Oh.
I think,
feel like we got away from Heaven's Gate.
That's you've listened to our podcast. It happens. I think I can safely say we'll keep DeRazzled on the air as long as we are aware that our critiques can affect people.
Good or bad,
Yeah. And, though I do want to remind you that we do have to answer to the cats.
The cats are very important and super judgmental.
They're incredibly judgmental. Hazel walked past a little bit ago and just was not having any of what we were doing.
Well, fantastic. I'm glad we took this deep dive into Heaven's Gate.
But at the end of the day, we all think this movie is a lot better than what people said it was.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a hell of an achievement.
Even not having seen the original cut, it cannot be worthy of that criticism.
Yeah.
No, and
to bastardize the words of Roger Ebert, I went into it thinking it can't possibly be as bad as everyone thought it was, and it wasn't.
I mean, as a film, I love it. I appreciate it. I will buy the Criterion now that I've seen this longer cut.
Yeah.
But again, like when we talk about why it got the hate it did, there's a lot of validity to it. It ended a lot of opportunity for a lot of filmmakers. There were a lot of filmmakers in New Hollywood that were probably just ready to get their shit going, and it all got shut down. So there is accountability on Cimino for that. There is an accountability for United Artists for that. But if there's one thing we've learned, there's always the people with money can get away with anything. I'm sure they all ended up just fine. Eventually, Cimino is the one that kind of had to deal with the long-term repercussions. Mm-hmm. He made a decent chunk of work after that. Year of the Dragon, I think, is an amazing film. that he made like in 1985 or 86 with Mickey Rourke. He loved Mickey Rourke. The Sicilian with Christopher Lambert is not so great, and I'm going to plug myself.
Do it.
I'm going to plug myself just for a second.
Oh, please do.
One of the follow-up episodes to this is going to be called Sucks to be Cimino, where I cover the downward spiral of Cimino's career. So this is kind of like the lead way into that. But yeah, like I said, it's a lesson learned for filmmakers, and I don't think they learn those lessons anymore because there's a lot more opportunity now where, I mean, A24, you've got people making films that no studio would have touched a decade ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think once Miramax collapsed and opened up the indie market to other studios, we are seeing a lot of bright new talent. And that's the future, because I think we've all learned, and we talked about this on the last episode, the big studios still haven't broken this formula of big budget supposed blockbusters. And this was the year that proved it with The Matrix. This was the year that proved it with any film that wasn't Spider-Man, essentially. You know, like they're learning their lessons the hard way.
Well said. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back to talk to you about Cultworthy Podcast.
Woohoo!
Welcome back, everybody. We are going to sit down with Antonio from the Cultworthy Podcast and talk about movies.
Yes.
Some more. This is the first time we're going to try this. It's a little game that we came up with called Can We Be Friends? Where we judge you harshly based upon your movie choices. We've provided you with 5 questions ahead of time.
Yeah, fuck you guys. You told me the questions. You didn't give me the context.
Sorry, I did fuck up. I had one job and I fucked it up. I'm sorry.
God damn. All right. Hopefully we can be friends. I've already made plans and everything.
I'm confident that it's going to turn out okay,
Honestly,
but let's see.
This is the first. I'm like, we're going to try with you first because you know your movies, but it's also like the first one. Like, I might not know these ones. Like your movie knowledge gives me a run for my money.
I will say, it just as a quick retort to that, when we did that, like, hey, recommend 5 movies thing on Twitter the other day, the 5 that you recommended, multiple people were like, oh fuck, I haven't seen any of these.
Well, I wanted to give them something new to try.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Perfect. So what is our first? What is the first question? Because I can't remember off the top of my head.
So the first question, okay, it was name a movie that you love.
So I just took that as my favorite movie because that's what I love, and that is Blade Runner.
As you had mentioned, yeah. No,
yeah, and I will say the 1992 director's cut, the final cut is good, but I think the director's cut is really where it's at.
And you just won the game on that alone, basically.
Yeah. Blade Runner is my top 3. It changes based upon my mood, but specifically that cut.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the final cut. Have you guys? And okay, I'm going to delve off into a mini tangent.
Sure.
My favorite book of all time is called Future Noir: The Making of Blade Runner by Paul Salmon. It's like the absolute final say in the history of Blade Runner, and I bought it in 1997 and read it. And this was before they found all of the stuff that ended up in the final cut. So I actually had to wait like another decade to actually see that final cut stuff. And when I saw it, it just didn't live up to my expectation.
Okay.
So therefore, the 1992 director's cut is still my favorite. And then everything that I love about the final cut, I love in its simplicity in words on a page from that book.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Amazing. I'm gonna have to check out that book.
And we're gonna sit through all. Is there 4 or 5 versions that are available to watch? I know at least 4.
Okay, let's see if I can do this right now. They got the original theatrical cut.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the international cut, which was the same with a little bit more violence. Then they had the work print cut, which was like a bootleg version. Then they had the 1992 director's cut. Then they had the final cut, which came out in the mid-2000s. Yes. So I'm going to say there's 5.
And we're
solid
sit
5.
Through all of them.
Oh no.
Honestly, the only one I haven't made the whole way through is the theatrical cut.
It's worth it, but I like the international cut a little bit better, which only exists on VHS or in the box set.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about that old VHS that I own, just the graininess of it and the dirtiness of it. Love it.
Excellent.
Fantastic. What's our next question?
Next question. Name a movie that you hate.
You're about to lose half your audience right now because
good.
I honestly think that Boondock Saints is one of the worst fucking movies ever made, and it's highly overrated, and I will die on that hill.
Yeah, I know some people that'll piss off.
I don't think I feel as strongly about it as you do. But I also think it's very overrated. It's like the movie you go to college and you're like, oh yeah, have you watched Boondock Saints? And you're like, oh, you gotta watch Boondock Saints. And you have like the poster in your
Yeah, I was going to say, the person saying that has 3 posters of the movie on their wall.
And they've never seen it sober.
Right.
No.
And they've never seen it like unadulterated by weed or Molly or whatever the fuck they're on. They've never seen it with a clear mind.
Shit, we just watched it with Miller Lite, but okay.
I could have been watching this on Molly.
Any movie that introduces its characters in a still frame with a little typing across the screen of like who they are and their representation and their history and date of birth, fuck that movie.
See, my brain immediately goes, oh, this reminds me of playing Streets of Rage as a kid. But I was like, oh, wait, this isn't a video game. Stop that.
Well, the guy that made it, go back and read your history on him, because that's what Harvey Weinstein thought. Not defending Harvey Weinstein, but he was like, oh, this kid is just making a fucking video game as a movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of history to that one.
Oof. Wow.
Anyway, let's get off Boondock Saints
Great.
before we piss off
Fantastic.
Okay, name a movie that you know is bad, but love anyway.
Okay, I was born in 1981, and in 1990, the first film that I paid with my own money to go see by myself was the Super Mario Brothers movie. And
Yes.
I will defend that movie again. Yeah, it's not a great movie, but I love it, and I love all the bad parts of it because, hey, someone took a chance. Someone took a shot.
Yep. No, I will die on that hill with you, 100%. I love that ridiculous movie so much.
You know what drives me insane about that movie is that whenever I suggested it as a party, I'm like, guys, you want to watch like a bad movie that's really fun? People freak out. They're like, how dare you call that bad? I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not. Okay.
I also said fun.
I said
fun. Why do you hate
There's lots
fun?
of bad movies that are fun.
Right. I'm like, I enjoy it. Like, I have a copy of it. I'm just not. It's not very good.
And here's another thing. I have a fiance and a little baby, so I'm not trying to get laid anymore. I owned the cassette single of the Roxette song over the closing credits, Almost Unreal, back in 1990, and I still have that fucking thing.
As you should. Oh,
I should.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, you're 3 for 3.
Oh, right. Yes.
So, okay, number 4. What's a movie that instantly puts you into a better mood?
Okay, so right now, in this time of my life, for like the last decade, it's Hot Tub Time Machine.
Interesting choice. Okay.
I will watch that movie anytime that I'm sad. It used to be my breakup movie. If I got dumped or if I had like a bad date or I was feeling shitty about myself, I'd watch Hot Tub Time Machine, get drunk, and just say, Great White Buffalo, Great White Buffalo, Great White Buffalo, over and over again. And then scroll my Instagram, you'll see like a decade's worth of posts every couple years of Great White Buffalo, I'm watching Hot Tub Time Machine. Blah, 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 blah. Anytime a date went wrong.
I need to see this movie.
I have seen it.
Okay.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. I have a deep abiding love of John Cusack.
Yeah.
So I saw it not in theaters. I think I rented it in college after it had been out for a while. But I definitely remember enjoying it, but I haven't watched it since then.
Okay.
So we should do a viewing.
We should do a viewing.
And
we should break up with our girlfriends and do a viewing.
I'm not going to spoil it, but I'll kind of give you like my psychology behind it. You've got 4 main characters.
Yeah.
Now, all these characters pretty much represent all the different parts of your personality as you've grown into an adult person. You've got the party animal, you've got the heartbroken, lovelorn man, you've got the guy who's uncomfortable with his masculinity and lets his partner do all the talking for him, and then you've got the fucking nerd.
Yeah.
And I think everyone in this podcast has all experienced those different parts in our life, and that's why that movie means so much to me. I can't believe I'm psychologically deconstructing fucking Hot Tub Time Machine.
I'm so proud of you.
But I'm doing
As
it.
you were doing this, I was trying to fit them into the personalities of the Ninja Turtles. It doesn't quite line up, but give me time.
Oh, fuck.
So there you go on that one.
Whew.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's beautiful. All right, last question. Name a movie you love, but would never recommend.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to probably lose you, because this movie's obscure, but I've talked about it on my podcast. 1983's Get Crazy by Alan Arkish. It is a New Year's Eve concert film with these made-up bands where you've got Malcolm McDowell essentially playing David Bowie / Mick Jagger, and it's one of those save our theater kind of shows where the theater's about to go under, a big evil corporation's about to take it over, and this theater owner has to throw one big concert to save it on New Year's Eve. It's just ridiculous nonsense. I love it, but every person I've recommended it to were like, I can't finish this fucking thing. What are you doing to me with all this crazy shit? It's just one of those movies.
What's it called again?
Get Crazy. It's been out of print forever. You can find a really shitty version on YouTube, but Kino Lorber just put out a Blu-ray that you can get for $13 on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but that's my
charge it to him?
I love it, but I wouldn't recommend it because you'll probably hate it, but you might love it.
Okay.
I am genuinely curious because in my mind, my brain immediately goes, that's like a proto Empire Records. I love that one.
It's part of that damn the man culture.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I said on my podcast, and I got a little, I'm not going to say flack for it, but I started some friendly debates. I said that the 2011 Muppet movie by James Bobbin was a ripoff of Get Crazy.
Interesting. Okay.
It follows almost the exact same plot structure.
Now I have to watch this
Somebody
movie.
needs to do a supercut.
Yeah. Somebody needs to do a supercut.
So yeah, that's my. I love it. I don't recommend it because everyone I recommended it to didn't like it, and that's why it's on that list. Because I think I'm 0 for 20 on that one of people saying that was great.
Well, I definitely want to watch it now, and
yeah,
we'll have to let you know if
I'm intrigued by the challenge.
Yeah. I think we can stay friends.
I think we can stay friends.
Yeah.
I think we can be friends.
I mean, you kind of got me on the first one anyway.
You slam dunked the first one and then just mid court shotted it on and swished it on Super Mario. I think so.
You could have started with Blade Runner director's 92 director's cut and just had 4 turds after it, and they're like, "Nah, you're so good."
Well, none of us have ever watched Turds, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You've never watched the Turds franchise? Starring Jack Black?
He would, though. You know he would. And you know that they wouldn't be terrible.
They'd be very watchable.
They'd make money.
They would absolutely make money.
Why is there another Turds movie out? How many of these are there? 7. He's still pumping them out.
Oh my god! How was that not the joke franchise movie they put at the beginning of Tropic Thunder?
Right. Well, what was the one that they had? The chunks?
Something like that.
Something along those lines. Yeah.
I mean, that's interchangeable. Whatever.
Yeah.
So this has nothing to do with anything, but you mentioned you used to work in the film world. What did you do?
Yeah, so for a long time, from age 8 till age 18, I had a stage mom who had me going for everything, going for commercials, going for, and no one can see me on this, so it's fine, but I used to be a cute kid. I auditioned for the Santa Claus here in Salt Lake City, Utah with Tim Allen, and I made the 4th callback for Bernard the Elf.
Oh shit!
And
Whoa.
the guy that got it, of course, David Krumholtz,
Mhm.
amazing. How can you compete with that? But honestly, guys, one of the main reasons why I didn't get a lot of work in this state was because I'm kind of brown in a state full of white people. And it's hard to cast
Yeah.
a slightly brown guy in a family full of white people. So I usually got the roles of like Pablo, the third baseman in the field in the Little League thing. Or,
Yeah.
I got the real ethnic roles. And that did a lot for me of not like respecting myself as a person as a teenage actor.
That would.
So I got out of that. I got out of that world. And then I started a video production company. We were doing wedding videos and concerts and dance recitals and making short films on the side with that money. But it just never really went anywhere. And once all of my friends kind of got married and had kids, I'm like, well, I'm not sure if I can do this on my own. So I did my second passion, which was cooking, and I'm still doing that.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. Utah's not a great place to get a film career if you're not white. That sounds a little sticky, but it's kind of true.
I'm honestly, I can't say I'm terribly surprised.
No.
It sucks.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm seeing a lot of changes now because, like I said, people are being able to do their own production and start their own companies and be more diverse. And I'm going to give a quick shout out to one of my producer buddies. His name is Duane Anderson. He produced a whole line of films that were made out here in Utah by a guy named David Boyle. Big Dreams, Little Tokyo, White on Rice. The Man from Reno, they were all Japanese and Asian American based, and they were all filmed in Salt Lake City, Utah, and their surrounding areas. And it really brought a lot of diversity in filmmaking to the state. So
Nice.
Hell yeah.
it's out there.
Where can somebody find those if they?
Man, they're on Amazon and Hulu and Netflix. Yeah, they're out there.
Cool.
Beautiful. Yeah, we should check some of that out.
Oh yeah. So you went from filmmaking. Well, you went from performing to filmmaking to cooking
To culinary.
to
Yeah.
culinary.
And now I'm podcasting.
What brought you to podcasting?
I've never lost that love for film, and I've been blogging for years about it and doing reviews on Letterboxd and stuff like that. And then the pandemic came around. I'm like, I need a hobby. I'm listening to podcasts. I've done radio spots before for the restaurant. I have an okay voice. Maybe I should take a shot at this. And now I'm on episode 35 of the Cultworthy Podcast. I'm on episode 5 of the Cultworthy Classic, which is its spinoff show. And I get to meet guys like you and be on your guys' show. So I feel like there's a great abundance of opportunity for people that want to talk about their passions.
I would agree with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you do. Like, I genuinely enjoy your show. Like your approach to film, your knowledge of film history and like the little minutia of things is fantastic. It's your show's always such an entertaining listen.
Well, thank you so much. And I love you guys and what you do because you take those chances of deconstructing the bad films that I don't want to talk about on my show. 'Cause I don't want to be that guy. I want to uncover and expose films because there are so many podcasts of just people talking shit about movies for 2 hours.
Mhm.
It's the context, it's the structure, it's the idea behind it. And I loved your guys' is like tackling the Razzies, trying to fix them, also defending films that didn't deserve these awards. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's right in my alley. That's right in my lane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So for anybody who didn't fucking listen to me when we started this episode and watch part 1, would you let them know what Cultworthy Podcast is?
So the Cultworthy Podcast is now weekly. I used to do it twice a week, but now that I have another show, I do it once a week on Wednesdays. I like to highlight obscure cinema and cult classics or films that are deserving of a cult status, because there are some films out there that just not enough people have seen to become cult worthy. And that's why it's an exposure show. I want people to watch these films, and hopefully I do a good enough job in like my 7-minute synopsis to get them excited and seek it out. And in doing so, I also try to avoid suggesting films that you can't find. Like, I want to have films that are accessible to anyone, either on YouTube or a streaming app for free, or if you got the $3 to spare, spend the $3 and watch this movie. Like, I want people to discover these films. I don't want to be that guy who's like, You can only find this on the Criterion Blu-ray, out of print since 1997, but you can find it for $75 on eBay. Yeah, fuck that guy too.
Yeah, I
You know,
appreciate that so much. There's nothing more frustrating than somebody like, oh, have you heard of this horror film that it was only released on toilet paper and you have to go to this cave in Nevada?
Oh, no, this is only available on Zoetrope. It has to be printed on diamond.
and you have to answer 3 questions or else you get launched off the bridge by the troll.
Troll played by Jack Black.
Man, we're getting him a lot of work today.
I know, right?
And you also have Cultworthy Classic.
So the Cultworthy Classic is my new show where I am tackling cult-worthy classic films made before 1970 because also I feel like I shouldn't put films like we just did The Sadist, or we also did Detour, which is a great film noir. I'm not going to put that in the same category as Chopping Mall. You know, I don't want to bundle those together. So out of respect to these vintage classics that I want more people to see, I gave it its own show where each week I have a new guest and we talk about those in detail, usually an hour plus. If you guys love classic films before 1970, I'd love to have you on and talk about one.
That'd be great.
And the funny thing is that one actually garnished a lot more interest than my original show, where I'm booked till like mid-May with guests. It's really, really cool that there are people that want to talk about these. So rules. I feel like I'm doing the Lord's work, guys, as you are.
That's what I said when I pitched this, Joe. Let's do the Lord's work and talk about the Razzies. Antonio, thank you so much for coming on. If somebody wants to listen to either of your shows, where would they find you?
On all the platforms, you can go to thecultworthy.com, where I have links to all the different platforms where my shows are on. Most of my listeners are on Apple, so I like to push Apple because, hey, that's what feeds me when it comes to my cent per listen Anchor ads. Go Anchor. So yeah, that's it. But also on the Cultworthy podcast, I've got links to all my other favorite podcasts I listen to. You guys are definitely going on there. And I've also got all the links to my reviews. There's probably about 400 now on that blog site. Ooh, so yeah, check it out.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us, for coming up with this idea and having us on your show.
Yeah, this has been so much
I wish there was
fun.
a season 2 so I could jump on it, but God, you're canceling the show, so...
I'll think about it. You've talked me down off the edge. Joe, it feels kind of redundant to be like, hey, where can people find us? The exact same fucking place.
Yeah, you can find our show in all the same places. You're listening to it right now. What are you talking about? But, you can find our...
Do you have the internet? Do you have a cell phone?
Yeah, please find us in those places. Spread the word. Share and talk about the show on social media. You can find us on Twitter at DeRazzledPod, on Facebook at DeRazzled Podcast, and Instagram at DeRazzled_podcast. Please rate and review the show so we pop up in search results and get pulled in by those algorithms more frequently so people can discover us more easily. Particularly Apple, Spotify, and Good Pods are great places to do those things. Also, just in general, if you're not listening on Good Pods, check it out. It's a pretty cool community forming over there.
It's a cool community.
And if you have any thoughts or feelings about anything that we've said about any of these movies or any fixes that we've done for other movies, please send us a message at derazzledpodcast@gmail.com, or you can also suggest movies that we cover in Season 2.
Come back next time. We're sure to...
Razzle dazzle, yeah.
There we go.
There it is. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Shit.